The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating seats that circled the central speaking platform. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Tymian of the Vorthak Empire stood tall on his 6 legs, his purple scales gleaming under the artificial lights. His kind had conquered more star systems than any other race in the past 100 years. Their bioships could eat entire planets and turn the material into weapons. He was not used to being told what he could and could not do. "This is ridiculous," Taman said, his voice booming across the hall. "You speak of ancient laws that make no sense. We are the Vorthak Empire. We go where we please." Elder Yansu floated in her transparent bubble, her gas-based form swirling with colors that showed her emotional state. Right now, those colors were dark with worry. She had been part of the council for over 2,000 years and had seen this conversation many times before. It never ended well. "The Sol system quarantine has been in place for 3,000 cycles," she said calmly. "No ship may enter, no probe may be sent, no contact may be attempted with the third planet or its inhabitants." General Wu Jin, who stood beside Taman, laughed loudly. His mechanical arm clicked as he gestured dismissively. Half of his body had been replaced with biomechanical parts after countless battles. He feared nothing in the galaxy. "What could possibly threaten us?" Wu Jin asked. "Our latest intelligence reports show they still use chemical rockets. They fight wars with metal bullets. They have not even left their own solar system properly." From across the hall, Captain Haijin of the Kelrathi Syndicate spoke up. Her blue skin sparkled with embedded quantum processors that allowed her to think faster than most organic beings. Her people had mastered technology that could bend reality itself. "The General speaks truth," she said, her voice carrying the electronic undertones of her cybernetic enhancements. "Our ancestors who made these laws were primitive compared to us now. They ran from beings who had barely discovered fire when we first found them. We have quantum disruptors. We have reality-bending weapons. We have ships that can exist in multiple dimensions at once." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. The Zephyrian collective nodded their crystal heads in unison. The Mordak clan stomped their heavy feet in approval. Even the peaceful Ashanti seemed uncertain about maintaining the old restrictions. Elder Yansu's colors shifted to deep red, a sign of great distress among her people. She had hoped this day would never come, but she had known it was inevitable. Every few centuries, a new generation of leaders would question the old warnings. They would look at their advanced technology and wonder why they should fear a species that seemed so primitive. "You do not understand," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "The quarantine was not put in place because they were dangerous to us in the way you think. It was put in place because they are dangerous in ways you cannot imagine." Taman's scales rippled with colors that showed his irritation. "Speak plainly, Elder. What makes these humans so special that the entire galaxy must avoid them?" Yansu was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with the weight of history. "They learn," she said simply. "They learn faster than any species we have ever encountered. When our explorers first found them 3,000 years ago, they had just discovered how to make tools from metal. Within 50 years of that first contact, they had reverse-engineered our scout ship's technology and improved upon it." The hall erupted in disbelief. Several delegates shouted that such a thing was impossible. The technological gap between spacefaring civilizations and planet-bound ones was measured in millions of years of development. The first contact team barely escaped. Yansu continued when the noise died down. "The humans had taken our plasma weapons and made them more efficient. They had studied our hull materials and created something stronger. They had looked at our faster-than-light drive and built a better version." General Wu Jin's mechanical parts whirred as he processed this information. "Even if this tale is true, that was 3,000 years ago. They have been isolated since then. How much could they have advanced on their own?" "That," said Yansu, "is exactly what we have been afraid to find out." Captain Heejin's quantum processors hummed as she calculated possibilities. "Elder, with respect," You ask us to believe that a species we could have crushed 3 millennia ago has somehow become a threat through isolation. This defies all logic. Does it? Asked a new voice. Council Speaker Dalsu had been silent throughout the debate, but now he activated the central hologram system. Images appeared in the air above the platform, showing long-range sensor data from the edges of the Sol system. These readings were taken last year by our most advanced stealth probes, Dalsu explained. They could not get close enough for detailed scans, but what they found should concern us all. The images showed massive structures throughout the Sol system, artificial constructs that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever built, energy signatures that suggested technology far beyond what any known civilization possessed. Impossible, whispered Taemin, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The structures appear to be built into asteroids, moons, and planets, Dalsu continued. The energy output from their star has been modified in ways our scientists cannot explain. Whatever the humans have been doing during their isolation, they have not been idle. Captain Hyejin stared at the readings, her quantum processors working overtime to analyze the data. These power signatures, they suggest the humans have learned to manipulate stellar energy on a massive scale. Elder Yansu's colors had shifted to a deep, sad blue. Now you begin to understand why the quarantine was put in place. Humans do not just learn from others. They take every piece of knowledge they encounter and push it to its absolute limits. They ask what if, and then make it reality. The hall had fallen completely silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy stared at the impossible images floating above them. The question before us now, said Council Speaker Dalsu, is whether we maintain the quarantine or whether we finally make official contact with humanity. Taemin looked around the hall, seeing the fear in the eyes of beings who had conquered worlds and commanded fleets that could destroy star systems. For the first time in his military career, he felt uncertain. What do we know about their current intentions? He asked quietly. They have made no attempts to leave their system, Dalsu replied. They seem content to remain isolated, but these energy signatures suggest they have the capability to travel anywhere in the galaxy if they chose to do so. General Wu Jin's mechanical parts clicked nervously. So we have a choice. We can leave them alone and hope they stay that way, or we can make contact and risk triggering something we cannot control. Or, said Captain Hyejin, her voice cold with the certainty of her cybernetic logic, we can end the threat before it has a chance to spread. Elder Yansu's colors flashed bright red in alarm. That would be the worst possible decision. If there is one thing our ancestors learned about humans, it is that they respond to threats by becoming more dangerous than the threat itself. But pride is a powerful force, especially among those who have never known defeat. As the council session ended without a resolution, 3 separate military commanders began making their own plans. Taemin contacted his fleet admirals. Captain Hyejin activated her quantum communication network. And in the shadows, others who had listened to the debate began to gather their forces. The warning had been given just as it had been for 3,000 years, but this time it would not be heeded. Admiral Kyung-ho stood in the living command center of his flagship, feeling the pulse of the great ship's heartbeat beneath his feet. The Death's Embrace was 15 kilometers of living tissue and biomechanical technology, a creature bred for war and shaped by Vorthak genetic mastery. Its hull could heal from damage, its weapons could grow stronger by consuming enemy materials, and its mind was linked directly to his own. Around him, 11 other bioships moved through space like a school of predatory fish. Each one was a masterpiece of biological engineering, capable of devouring asteroids and converting the raw materials into weapons, armor, or even smaller attack craft. The Vorthak had used these living ships to conquer 47 star systems, and Kyung-ho had never met an enemy they could not consume. Admiral, called Science Officer Dalsu from his organic control station, we are approaching the outer edge of the Sol system. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual formations in the asteroid belt. Kyung-ho felt his ship's curiosity mix with his own as they shared thoughts through their neural link. The Death's Embrace was hungry after the long journey, and the prospect of feeding on asteroid materials made its biomechanical systems pulse with anticipation. Show me, Kyung-ho commanded. the main display, grown from the same living tissue, as the ship itself flickered to life with images from their forward sensors. The asteroid belt looked normal at first glance, but as they got closer, details began to emerge that made no sense. "The asteroids have been moved," reported Navigation Officer Minho, his voice tight with confusion. "They are not in natural orbits. Someone has arranged them in specific patterns." Kyung-ho studied the formations with growing interest. The rocks had been positioned with mathematical precision, creating what looked like a three-dimensional maze stretching across millions of kilometers of space. But what caught his attention were the energy readings. "Dalsu, are you detecting power sources within those asteroids?" "Yes, Admiral. Massive ones. The energy signatures suggest the asteroids are not asteroids at all. They appear to be artificial, structures disguised to look like natural rocks." The Admiral felt his ship's excitement grow stronger. If the humans had built structures in space, that meant there would be metal to consume, technology to digest and improve upon. The bioships had evolved specifically to break down artificial materials and incorporate useful elements into their own systems. "Excellent," Kyung-ho said, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a predator that had found its prey. "Signal the fleet. We will begin feeding protocols immediately." The bioships moved forward eagerly, their living hulls opening feeding ports and extending mechanical tendrils designed to latch onto targets and begin the consumption process. The Death's Embrace selected the largest nearby asteroid, one that showed particularly strong energy readings. As they approached, Kyung-ho began to notice details that troubled him. The asteroid's surface was too smooth in places, too angular in others. What he had taken for natural rock formations were clearly manufactured components, but the scale was incredible. This single asteroid was larger than most Vorthak space stations. "Admiral," Dalsu called out, "I am detecting movement from multiple contact points. The asteroid is responding to our approach." Before Kyung-ho could ask what that meant, the asteroid opened like a flower. Massive sections of the disguised structure slid apart, revealing an interior that made the Admiral's mind reel. The hollow space inside was large enough to fit several bioships, and every surface was covered with machinery that hummed with barely contained power. But what made his blood freeze was the realization that this was not a space station. It was a factory designed to disassemble ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Kyung-ho shouted, but it was too late. The Death's Embrace had already extended its feeding tendrils toward what it thought was an asteroid. Instead of touching rock, the tendrils made contact with mechanical claws that grabbed them and held on with crushing force. The ship's living hull registered pain and confusion as it tried to pull away, but the human machinery was stronger. "They are cutting into our hull," screamed Damage Control Officer Hee-won. "But they are not trying to destroy us. They are harvesting us." Through the ship's shared senses, Kyung-ho felt the horror of what was happening. Industrial plasma cutters, designed for mining operations on a stellar scale, were slicing through the bioship's living armor with surgical precision. But instead of trying to kill the ship, the human machines were carefully extracting specific components while leaving the main structure intact. "They are studying us as they dismantle us," Dalsu reported, his voice filled with scientific fascination, despite their dire situation. "Every cut is perfectly placed to remove organs and biomechanical systems without causing fatal damage. They want to understand how we work." Around them, the other bioships were suffering the same fate. Each asteroid they had approached had revealed itself to be a massive automated shipyard, equipped with tools and machinery that could break down any vessel with incredible efficiency. The humans had turned their entire asteroid belt into a trap. "Weapons. Systems," Kyung-ho ordered. "All ships fire everything." The bioships responded by growing gun ports from their living hulls and launching attacks with plasma cannons, biomechanical missiles, and energy beams that could melt through most known materials. The weapons struck the human installations and simply disappeared into energy absorption systems that seemed designed specifically to handle such attacks. "Admiral," called Tactical Officer Young Chul from the Bone Crusher, one of the smaller bioships, "our weapons are having no effect. Their absorption systems are converting our energy attacks into power for their mining operations. Kyung-ho watched in growing horror as the human machines continued their work. The plasma cutters were now deep, inside the Death's embrace, carefully removing biomechanical components and feeding them into processing units that broke them down into basic materials. He could feel his ship's pain and confusion through their neural link. How do they know exactly where to cut? He wondered aloud. Admiral, Dalsu said quietly, I believe they have been preparing for this encounter for a very long time. These machines know the exact structure of Vorthak bioships. They have detailed plans of our anatomy. The implications hit Kyung-ho like a physical blow. The humans had not just built defenses against unknown enemies. They had studied the Vorthak, specifically, and created weapons designed to counter their exact capabilities. They knew we were coming, he whispered. Not just that we were coming, Dalsu replied, but exactly how we would attack and what our ships could do. Through the shared senses of his dying ship, Kyung-ho felt something that no Vorthak admiral had ever experienced. Complete helplessness. The human machines worked with mechanical precision, harvesting biomechanical organs and storing them in containment units. They were not just destroying the bioships, they were learning from them. Emergency jump protocols, he ordered. All ships that can still move, retreat immediately. But only the Death's embrace was still capable of faster-than-light travel. The other 11 bioships had been too thoroughly integrated into the human mining operations to escape. Their living hulls were being processed like ore, their biological components studied and catalogued, their technological systems reverse-engineered in real time. Admiral, Haiwan reported, the humans are releasing our ship. They have taken what they wanted. Kyung-ho felt his ship's relief as the mechanical claws released their grip and the plasma cutters withdrew. But the Death's embrace was no longer the magnificent predator it had been. Large sections of its hull were missing, its biomechanical systems had been partially harvested, and its living tissue was scarred with precise surgical cuts. As they limped away from the asteroid belt, Kyung-ho stared at the sensor readings that showed his other ships being completely processed by the human machines. In less than 6 hours, 11 of the most advanced bioships in the galaxy had been reduced to raw materials and technical data. Set course for Vorthak space, he ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. Maximum speed. Admiral, Dalsu asked, quietly. What do we tell the Empire? Kyung-ho looked at the readings one more time, watching as the last of his fleet disappeared into the human processing systems. The machines were already beginning to close the asteroids again, returning them to their innocent appearance. We tell them the truth, he said finally. We tell them that the humans do not fight wars the way we understand them. They do not seek to destroy their enemies. They seek to understand them completely, and then they use that understanding to make themselves stronger. The Death's embrace jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its wounded crew and a warning that would terrify the Vorthak Empire. Behind them, the asteroid belt returned to its peaceful appearance, but now it contained detailed plans for building bioships that would be superior to anything the Vorthak had ever created. The humans had not just defeated the first Armada. They had learned from it, and that was far more dangerous than any military victory. Fleet Admiral So-young stood on the bridge of the Quantum Blade, watching reality bend around her ship as they moved through folded space-time. The Kelrathi had mastered technology that other species could barely understand, let alone replicate. Her ships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, could phase through solid matter at will, and carried weapons that could delete targets from existence by unmaking the quantum fields that held them together. The reports from the Vorthak defeat had been dismissed by Kelrathi Command as exaggeration. Bioships were crude technology compared to quantum engineering. The humans might have industrial-scale mining equipment, but they could hardly fight what they could not touch. Admiral, called Science Coordinator Dong-Wu from his quantum interface station, we are approaching the Earth satellite. Our preliminary scans confirm it is not a natural formation. So-young nodded, her cybernetic implants processing data, streams that would overwhelm an organic mind. Through her enhanced senses, she could perceive the quantum fluctuations that revealed the truth about Luna. The entire satellite had been hollowed out and converted into something that defied classification. "Show me the analysis," she commanded. The main display filled with impossible readings. Luna was not just artificial, it was a single, massive machine. The quantum sensors revealed chamber after chamber, tunnel after tunnel, all connected in a pattern that suggested a purpose beyond anything the Kilrathi had ever encountered. "It appears to be some kind of particle accelerator," reported Captain Seung Jun from the escort vessel Probability Storm. "But the scale is incredible. The entire satellite is one continuous acceleration chamber." So Young's quantum processors calculated the implications at light speed. A particle accelerator the size of a moon could generate energies that approached theoretical limits. But what could the humans possibly need with such power? "All ships maintain quantum phase," she ordered. "If they try to use conventional weapons against us, they will simply pass through our hulls harmlessly." The Kilrathi fleet moved closer to Luna, their ships flickering in and out of normal spacetime as their quantum drives kept them partially disconnected from physical reality. It was the ultimate defensive system. Attacks that could not interact with their quantum state could not harm them. That was when Luna opened fire. The first sign that something was wrong came from the quantum field detectors. Deep inside Luna, massive generators were creating distortions in spacetime that made So Young's enhanced mind struggle to process the data. "Admiral," Dongwu called out, his voice tight with disbelief, "they are not firing conventional weapons. They are firing space itself." Before So Young could ask what that meant, the quantum blade was hit by something that should not have been possible. The human weapon did not try to damage their ship or penetrate their defenses. Instead, it simply deleted the quantum fields that allowed their ship to exist in multiple dimensions. The sensation of being forced back into normal space-time was like being crushed by an invisible weight. So Young felt her quantum interface overload as her ship was suddenly subject to the full laws of physics. Around her, the crew screamed as their enhanced senses were overwhelmed by the transition. "Damage report," she ordered. But the answer was worse than she had feared. "No physical damage," reported Engineering Officer Hae-young. "But our quantum drives have been completely shut down. We are trapped in normal space." Through the fleet communication system, So Young heard similar reports from her other ships. The human weapon had not destroyed them, but it had stripped away their greatest advantage. They were now just ordinary vessels facing an enemy that had somehow learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality. "Impossible," whispered Captain Seung Jun. "No species has mastered quantum field manipulation to this degree. The energy requirements alone should be beyond any civilization." But Luna was just getting started. The second wave of attacks came in the form of gravitational distortions that made space itself twist into impossible shapes. So Young watched through her sensors as the fabric of spacetime around her fleet began to fold and compress, creating gravity wells that could crush even Kilrathi battle armor. "They are treating physics like a tool," Dongwu reported, his voice filled with scientific fascination despite their desperate situation. "The humans have not just learned to manipulate quantum fields and gravity. They have learned to rewrite the fundamental constants of reality in localized areas." So Young's cybernetic mind raced through the implications. The humans had not just built weapons, they had built devices that could change the basic rules of how the universe worked. In the space around Luna, the speed of light was different. Gravity flowed in directions that violated every known law, and quantum mechanics operated according to principles that the Kilrathi had never imagined. "All ships, emergency retreat," she ordered. But even as she spoke, she realized it might be too late. The third wave of attacks was the most terrifying yet. Luna began firing bursts of what the sensors identified as pure mathematics. Equations given physical form, mathematical. Concepts turned into weapons that could alter the probability of existence itself. The probability storm simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but deleted from reality as if it had never been built. The mathematical weapon had calculated the ship's existence as improbable and had made that calculation reality. "Admiral," He Young called out, her voice breaking. With fear, they are not just using advanced technology. They are using concepts that should not be possible to weaponize. How do you fight an enemy that can make mathematics into ammunition? So Young stared at the readings that showed Luna continuing to transform the space around them. The humans had turned their moon into more than a weapon. They had turned it into a machine that could rewrite the laws of physics on demand. They have been studying us, she realized aloud. Not just studying our technology, but studying our understanding of physics itself. They have learned things about the universe that we never even imagined were possible to learn. The surviving ships of her fleet struggled to retreat, but the humans were not finished demonstrating their capabilities. Luna began to fire what the quantum sensors identified as weaponized time, temporal distortion fields that could age a ship to dust in seconds or reverse its existence until it became the raw materials from which it was built. Admiral, Dongwu reported, I am detecting human installations throughout this system. Every planet, every major asteroid shows signs of similar modifications. They have turned their entire solar system into a research laboratory. The horrible truth began to dawn on So Young. The humans had not been content to simply build better weapons or stronger defenses. They had spent 3,000 years in isolation, studying the fundamental nature of reality itself. They had learned to treat the universe like a computer program that could be hacked and modified. How long have they been preparing for this? She asked quietly. Based on the scale of these modifications, Dongwu replied, I estimate they have been working on this for at least 2,000 years. Maybe longer. 2,000 years of isolation. 2,000 years of asking what if and then making the impossible into reality. The humans had not just advanced their technology, they had transcended the normal limitations of what technology could do. The quantum blade finally reached the edge of Luna's weapons range, but only 3 other ships had survived the retreat. 7 vessels of the most advanced quantum fleet in the galaxy had been destroyed or deleted from existence by weapons that operated on principles the Kelrathi could barely comprehend. Set course for Kelrathi space, So Young ordered, her enhanced mind still struggling to process what they had experienced. Maximum quantum drive. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, So Young composed her report to Kelrathi Command. She would tell them that the humans had not just mastered technology, they had mastered reality itself. They had learned to treat the universe as a toolkit, and had spent millennia figuring out how to use tools that other species did not even know existed. Behind them, Luna returned to its innocent appearance, but its transformation was complete. The humans had demonstrated that they could defend themselves against enemies that existed partially outside normal spacetime. They had shown that quantum phase technology, gravitational manipulation, and even mathematical probability could all be turned into weapons if one understood the universe deeply enough. The second Armada had learned the same lesson as the first, but in a different way. The humans did not just adapt to their enemies' strengths, they transcended them entirely. They had become something that operated on a level of reality that other species could not even perceive, let alone challenge. And somewhere in the depths of Luna, human scientists were already analyzing the quantum technology they had captured, learning how to improve upon it, and adding new capabilities to their growing arsenal of impossible weapons. Supreme Commander Ji-hoon stood in the command center of the massive battle station Galaxy's End, watching as the largest armada in galactic history assembled around him. Ships from 17 different species filled the space around the station, their combined firepower capable of destroying entire star systems. Never before had so many civilizations united for a single purpose. The crystal ships of the Zelani floated like living jewels, their hulls capable of storing and redirecting any energy weapon. The mechanical dreadnoughts of the Korvac Collective bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. Energy beings from the Vorth Collective had possessed robotic bodies specifically for this mission, bringing technology that existed in forms of matter that most species could not even perceive. Status report, Ji-hoon commanded, his voice carrying across communication channels to 10,000 different vessels. Admiral In-soo, commanding the Vanguard fleet, responded first. All 17 species have reported ready status. We have bioships, quantum vessels, reality-bending technology, and weapons that operate on principles ranging from conventional explosives to pure thought manipulation. The Supreme Commander nodded grimly. The reports from both the Vorthak and Kelrathi defeats had finally convinced the galaxy that the human threat was real. But pride and fear had combined to create this massive response. Surely no single planet could stand against the combined might of the galaxy's greatest military powers. Long-range scanner report, Ji-Hoon ordered. Sensor operator Hoon-Woo activated the Armada's most advanced detection systems, devices that could peer across light years and analyze everything from quantum fluctuations to the thoughts of telepathic species. What the sensors revealed made the entire command center fall silent. "Commander," Hoon-Woo said slowly, "the entire Sol system has been fortified. Every planet, every major asteroid, every comet shows signs of artificial modification. But that is not the most disturbing part." "Continue," Ji-Hoon said, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "The star itself shows artificial modifications. Sol is no longer a natural star. The humans have been engineering it." The implications hit the command center like a physical blow. Stellar engineering was theoretical technology that existed only in the fantasies of the most advanced civilizations. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible for any species to achieve. "That cannot be correct," declared Admiral Insu. "No civilization has ever successfully modified a star. The scale of such an undertaking would require the resources of thousands of planets." But the sensor readings did not lie. Sol showed clear signs of internal modifications, its nuclear fusion processes directed and controlled by technology that the galaxy's best scientists could not even identify. "All ships, maintain maximum defensive configurations," Ji-Hoon ordered. "If the humans have learned stellar engineering, we must assume they can use their star as a weapon." The Armada moved slowly into the Sol system, their combined sensors, scanning everything for signs of threat. What they found defied comprehension. The asteroid belt was not just fortified, it was a three-dimensional maze of weapon platforms that stretched for billions of kilometers. The outer planets had been converted into massive factories that showed energy outputs comparable to small stars. "Commander," reported Chief Engineer Subin from the engineering section, "I am detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the system. The humans appear to have hidden massive structures using gravitational lensing technology." Before Ji-Hoon could respond, the hidden structures revealed themselves. What the Armada had taken for empty space suddenly filled with installations that had been bent out of visible existence by controlled gravity fields. Platforms the size of moons appeared throughout the system, each one bristling with weapons that operated on principles the combined knowledge of 17 species could not identify. "Defensive screens up," Ji-Hoon ordered. "All ships prepare for—" He never finished the command. Sol itself attacked. The star began to pulse with directed energy that had nothing to do with natural solar flares. Streams of concentrated stellar matter, compressed and accelerated to near light speed, lanced out from the surface of the sun with precision that suggested the humans could control their star like a targeting computer. The first volley struck the crystal ships of the Zilani, whose hulls were designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks. But this was not energy in any form they had ever encountered. This was actual stellar matter, the fusion-powered heart of a star turned into artillery shells. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Insu as he watched crystal ships that had survived battles with energy beings simply evaporate under the stellar bombardment. "How do you defend against a weapon made from the core of a sun?" The mechanical dreadnoughts of the Korvac Collective tried to respond with their planet-cracking weapons, but their attacks were absorbed by gravitational fields that the humans had somehow learned to generate on command. Every missile, every energy beam, every exotic particle cannon shot was simply redirected into the hungry gravity wells that surrounded each human installation. "Commander," Subin reported, her voice breaking with disbelief. "The humans are not just using the star as a weapon. They are using the entire system as a single, integrated defensive network. Every planet is a fortress, every asteroid is a gun platform, and the star itself is the central targeting computer." Ji-Hoon watched through the Armada's sensors as the scale of human engineering became clear. They had not just built defenses, they had transformed their entire solar system into a machine designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of any force that dared to threaten them. The energy beings of the Vorth Collective tried to phase shift into dimensions where physical attacks could not touch them, but the humans had weapons that could follow them into alternate realities. Streams of modified space-time reached through dimensional barriers and deleted the energy beings from existence across multiple planes of reality simultaneously. "How long have they been working on this?" Ji-hoon asked, though he was not sure. He wanted to know the answer. "Based on the scale and integration of these modifications," Hoon-woo replied, "I estimate at least 3,000 years. This entire system is a work of art that has been in progress since before most of our civilizations achieved spaceflight. 3,000 years of isolation. 3,000 years of taking every piece of knowledge they had ever encountered and pushing it beyond all reasonable limits. The humans had not just prepared for this day. They had spent millennia turning their entire solar system into the ultimate expression of defensive engineering." The second wave of attacks came in the form of gravitational weapons that turned space itself into artillery. Planets throughout the system began to pulse with modified gravity fields, launching gravitational waves that could crush ships like empty containers. The humans had learned to use the mass of entire worlds as ammunition. "Emergency retreat," Ji-hoon ordered, but even as he spoke he knew it was too late for most of the Armada. The third wave was the most terrifying yet. The humans began to demonstrate that they could manipulate time itself. Sections of the Armada found themselves trapped in temporal fields where minutes passed like hours, allowing the human weapons to fire thousands of shots for everyone the aliens could manage in return. "They are not fighting us," realized Communications Officer Wan-ho as he watched ship after ship disappear under the impossible bombardment. "They are teaching us. This is a demonstration of what they can do, not the limits of their capability." The horrible truth of his words became clear as the human attacks suddenly stopped. The Armada, which had numbered in the tens of thousands, now consisted of fewer than 50 ships. The rest had been destroyed, captured, or simply deleted from existence by weapons that operated on principles that challenged the basic understanding of what was possible. "Why did they stop?" Ji-hoon asked. The answer came in the form of a communication signal, broadcast on frequencies that reached every surviving ship simultaneously. The voice that spoke was calm, measured, and spoke in perfect translations of every language used by the Armada. "This demonstration is complete," the human voice said. "You have now seen a small sample of our defensive capabilities. We recommend that you return to your respective civilizations and inform them that humanity is willing to establish peaceful relations, but only on our terms." Ji-hoon stared at the readings that showed human installations throughout the system beginning to power down their weapons. The demonstration was over, and the humans were allowing the survivors to leave. "Retreat Coordinator Myungjin," he called out, "set course for the Galactic Core, maximum speed." As the surviving ships of the greatest armada in galactic history limped away from the Sol system, Ji-hoon began to understand the magnitude of what they had faced. The humans had not just defeated them, they had demonstrated that the entire concept of conquest was meaningless when applied to a civilization that could turn stars into weapons and planets into ammunition. Behind them, the Sol system returned to its peaceful appearance. But the lesson had been delivered with mathematical precision. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were something entirely new, a civilization that had transcended the normal limitations of technology. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in the organization's history. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, but the usual sounds of political debate were replaced by stunned silence. The survivors of the three armadas had delivered their reports, and the galaxy was struggling to understand what those reports meant. Galactic historian Yu Jin stood at the central podium, surrounded by holographic displays showing ancient records that had been sealed for thousands of years. Her research team had worked for months to piece together the true story of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, and what they had discovered changed everything. "Fellow delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through The translation systems. We have all heard the reports from our military forces. 3 separate armadas representing the finest technology and greatest military minds in the galaxy have been defeated by the humans of Sol 3. But to understand why this happened, we must first understand what we have been hiding from ourselves for 3,000 years. She activated the first holographic display, showing the original contact records from humanity's first encounter with galactic civilization. The images were ancient, stored in data formats that few species even remembered how to read. The first contact was made by an exploration vessel of the Ashanti Collective. Eugen continued. Their mission was simple: catalog the species on Sol 3 and determine if they were ready for galactic contact. What they found was a species that had just discovered metallurgy and was beginning to develop simple tools. Research Director Sang Woo joined her at the podium, his expression grim as he prepared to deliver information that would shock the assembled delegates. The contact lasted exactly 17 days, he said. During that time, the human specimens they studied demonstrated learning capabilities that terrified the exploration team. By day 3, the humans had figured out how the translation device worked. By day 7, they had reverse-engineered the basic principles of the anti-grav units. By day 15, they had built a working model of the ship's communication system. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled delegates. Such rapid technological advancement was impossible. Most species took centuries to understand technologies that were even slightly beyond their current development level. The exploration team tried to end the contact safely, Eugen continued, but the humans had already learned too much. When the ship tried to leave, the humans followed them, not in ships of their own, but by building a crude, faster-than-light communication device from salvaged parts and sending messages to other human settlements across their planet. The implications were staggering. In 17 days, humanity had made the leap from basic metallurgy to faster-than-light communication by studying a ship they were never supposed to have access to in the first place. The exploration team barely escaped, Sang Woo said quietly. But they left behind more than just the humans they had studied. They left behind traces of their technology, biological samples from their ship's food supplies, and data fragments from their computers. Elder Council Member Ki Young rose from her seat, her ancient voice filled with the weight of knowledge that had been kept secret for millennia. The quarantine was not established to protect the galaxy from human aggression, she said slowly. It was established to protect the galaxy from human capability. In 17 days, they had demonstrated that they could reverse engineer and improve upon technology that was thousands of years beyond their natural development level. The hall erupted in chaos as delegates from across the galaxy shouted questions and demands for more information. How could such information have been kept secret? Why had they not been told the truth about human capabilities? Ambassador Tae Min, still bearing the scars from his flagship's encounter with human mining operations, stood to address the assembly. His proud military bearing was gone, replaced by the humility of someone who had seen the future of warfare and recognized that his species was not prepared for it. The reports from our 3 armadas confirm what the ancient records predicted, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat. Humanity has spent 3,000 years in isolation, and they have used that time to transcend every limitation we thought was absolute. He activated his own holographic display, showing sensor readings from the 3 failed attacks on the Sol system. They have not just advanced their technology, he continued. They have redefined what technology can be. They use stars as weapons, planets as ammunition, and the fundamental forces of reality as tools in their workshop. Captain Hai Jin, whose quantum fleet had been reduced to 3 ships, added her own testimony. The humans do not fight wars the way we understand them, she said, her cybernetic implants still struggling to process the data from Luna's impossible weapons. They do not seek to defeat their enemies. They seek to understand them completely, and then they use that understanding to make themselves better than their enemies could ever hope to become. The assembled delegates struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what they were hearing. Humanity had become something that existed beyond the normal rules of technological development. They had become a species that treated the impossible as Simply another engineering challenge. What do they want from us? Asked a delegate from the Mordak clans. The answer came from an unexpected source. A new voice spoke through the council's communication system, clear and calm and speaking in perfect translations of every language in the hall. We want what we have always wanted, the human voice said, to be left alone to pursue knowledge and understanding. But we also recognize that isolation is no longer possible. A figure materialized in the center of the hall, projected through technology that none of the assembled delegates could identify. It was a human female, unremarkable in appearance, except for the quiet confidence in her bearing. I am Ambassador Che-Wan of the Sol Federation, she said simply. I have come to discuss the terms of humanity's entry into galactic civilization. The hall fell completely silent. After 3,000 years of quarantine, humanity was finally ready to join the galaxy. But they were not coming as supplicants seeking membership. They were coming as equals who had independently achieved everything the galaxy had to offer, and had then improved upon it. We propose a new model for galactic relations, Che-Wan continued, one based on mutual respect and shared knowledge, rather than conquest and domination. We have spent 3 millennia learning to understand the universe at its most fundamental level. We would like to share that knowledge with species who are ready to learn. Elder Ki-Young leaned forward in her seat, her ancient eyes studying the human ambassador carefully. And what of those who are not ready to learn? She asked. Che-Wan's expression remained calm, but there was something in her eyes that reminded every delegate of the reports from the 3 Armadas. They will have the same choice they have always had, she replied. They can leave us alone, or they can learn why the quarantine existed in the first place. The message was clear. Humanity was willing to be peaceful neighbors, but they had also demonstrated that they could defend themselves against any conceivable threat. The galaxy could accept them as equals, or it could continue to challenge them and face the consequences. The Sol Federation offers full membership in galactic civilization, Che-Wan announced, but on the condition that all current military restrictions and territorial disputes be resolved through negotiation rather than force. We have seen what conquest leads to, and we believe the galaxy is ready for a better approach. Over the following hours, the framework for a new galactic order was established. Humanity would share its advanced understanding of physics and engineering, with species that committed to peaceful development. Trade would be conducted on equal terms, with human technology being exchanged for resources and knowledge from across the galaxy. But the underlying truth was clear to everyone in the hall. The balance of power had shifted fundamentally. Humanity had become the species that other civilizations would measure themselves against, not because they had conquered anyone, but because they had proven that there were no limits to what intelligence and determination could achieve. The quarantine was officially ended, but the galaxy understood that it was beginning a new chapter in its history. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment, and they had used that time to become something unprecedented, a civilization that could make the impossible into reality through pure applied intelligence. The warnings had been ignored. Pride had led to defeat, and now the galaxy would learn to coexist with beings who treated the fundamental forces of the universe as tools in their workshop. It was the beginning of a new age, one where the question was not whether something was possible, but whether humanity had figured out how to do it yet. And in the depths of space, human scientists continued their work, pushing the boundaries of knowledge ever further, asking what if, and then making their answers into reality. The galaxy had finally met its match, and that match had been willing to share rather than conquer. The future would be written by those brave enough to learn, from the species that had turned isolation into transcendence,